Well, welcome everyone to the Academic Resilience Series. My name is Dr. Ann Godino. I teach in Education Foundations. So pleased to have you here with us today. I'd like to share with you that we have an ongoing series that happens every couple of Wednesdays, and we do hope that you will join us as your schedule permits. Our next session will be on Wednesday, December 2, and it will feature Dr. David Henriquez, who is coordinator here at Millersville of the Exploratory Program and chair of the Academic Advisement. But today we're fortunate to have some other guests who will be introduced by the leader of our series. So I'd like to turn this over now to Dr. Margaret Mabindio. Dr. Mabindio.
Thank you. I want to begin by just simply thanking you so much for finding the time to join us this afternoon. As you have heard, my name is Dr. Margaret Mbindio. I'm an academic advisor and also an assistant professor in the Department of Academic Advisement and Student Development. I also serve as the coordinator for advisement in the Colleges of Arts and Humanities and Social Studies, as well as the Business College. And we are very, very pleased to have our guest speaker today, who came along with our own intern in a department. And we can all attest to going through some tough moments. This year has not been easy. It has been very stressful in one way or another. The pandemic, daily activities of doing things virtually, not seeing our friends, physically, it has really been hard. And so today's topic, which is entitled A Positive Psychology Approach to Difficult Moments, will give us some ideas about how to approach these difficult times and be resilient in the hardships we are facing on a daily basis. And Dr. Lisa House, who is a faculty member at Millersville University in the Department of Counseling, has graciously agreed to speak to us about this very important topic. Lisa is a licensed clinical psychologist, and she specializes in quite a number of areas, including anxiety disorders, depression, substance abuse, multicultural issues, mental issues, among others. And she really, truly cares for our students. And so please join me as we welcome Lisa, Dr. Lisa House, and our intern, Anna Boss. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that great introduction. Hannah, do you want to tell everyone a little bit about yourself and kind of where you're from and how you've been working with us for the last couple of years?
Sure. Thanks, Dr. House. Hi, folks. My name's Hannah. I am the doctoral intern with the Millersville Counseling Center. I'm finishing up my doctorate degree at Widener University right now. And I moved up here from Baltimore City last year, and I'm finishing up my second year with Millersville this year. I'm really excited to join you folks and talk about positive psychology today.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right, so let's get started. Okay, so today's topic is using positive psychology to help during difficult moments. We all know that this is a very stressful time, and we hope that you're going to find this presentation to be relevant and useful as we gear up for a lot of uncertainty that lies ahead with the winter months coming in regards to the pandemic and changes with everything going all virtual at Millersville and having to, figure out social dynamics, family dynamics, loneliness, and a lot that comes with just this pandemic and whole uncertainty in the world right now. Let's see, our presentation is going to provide some psychoeducation about what positive psychology is, some of the roots, some of the research, and what the research has shown and found. And we're also going to talk about and provide you with some hands-on interactive activities to do. So we would really encourage participation, and we hope that you'll learn and take a lot from that and be able to incorporate that in your daily life to provide some sense of meaning, some sense of relaxation, and just a way to be able to cope with the anxiety and uncertainty that's going on. We'll also focus on the specific pandemic that's going on and how to use positive psychology during the pandemic. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to raise your hands and we will get to you. Also, again, we'd like to encourage as much participation during the interactive activities as possible. And we'll allow folks to either chat in during that time or also speak if you'd like to.
Lisa, it's Ann. I'm sorry to interrupt. Should we be seeing a PowerPoint right now?
Yes, can you not see it?
No, we just see your name right now. So I want to ask if Aubrey's around, if she could join us back in and help us to get the PowerPoint going here.
So what is positive psychology? There are two complementary strategies for improving the human condition. One is to relieve what is negative in life. The other is to strengthen what is positive. Mainstream psychology focuses largely on the first strategy. Positive psychology focuses on the second. And this was a quote written from the founder of positive psychology. And it's a relatively new area of study, and it was founded in 2000. To push the brief definition a little bit further, positive psychology is a scientific approach to studying human thoughts, feelings, and behavior. It focuses on strengths instead of weaknesses. It focuses on building the good in life instead of repairing the bad. Many times when you think about psychology, you think about focusing on helping people who are already in distress and helping to bring them back up to sort of a normal, from struggling to normal. But this type of psychology focuses on, building what's right instead of fixing what is wrong. As a field, positive psychology spends much of its time thinking about topics like character strengths, optimism, life satisfaction, happiness, well-being, gratitude, compassion. And when we think about compassion, a lot of the focus in positive psychology is on self-compassion, self-esteem, self-confidence, hope, and optimism. These topics are studied in order to learn how to help people flourish and live their best lives. Optimism has been proven to improve the immune system, prevent chronic disease, and help people cope with unfortunate news. Gratitude, there's a lot of research on that. That's been associated with optimism and has been determined that grateful people are often happier, receive more social support, are less stressed, and are less depressed. The findings of numerous studies of patients who are very ill, many of so are terminally ill, suggest that patients who have remained optimistic showed symptoms later and survived longer than patients with a more realistic outlook. We're going to talk about some of these elements of positive psychology, particularly focus on gratitude, hope, and optimism later on in the presentation. And our two interactive exercises are going to focus on these as well. But I just wanted to touch base and give you an overview of some of the elements and the terminology that goes along with positive psychology. So if you want to take some time and look at some of the research that's been done, I've kind of noted some of the most notable findings. Again, this area of study the topic of positive psychology has only been introduced since 2000. So it's a relatively new area of research. I'd like to say that, the take-home message from these studies is that gratitude interventions have a number of positive effects. A lot of what has been found is that people's moods are improved. People's feelings of thankfulness is an outcome based on gratitude. Of all the areas studied in this relatively young field, gratitude has probably the widest body of research. Grateful people have been shown to have greater levels of positive affect, a greater sense of belonging. They've been found to have lower levels of depression and stress. Furthermore, efforts to make people more grateful have their own benefits. And I think that's an interesting piece to think about. Gratitude is clearly an important part of a good life, and it therefore demands further careful research. Each of these studies has some scientific merit, but again, we're really hoping that there's going to be some more and more research in this area as time goes on. There's also been some studies looking at positive psychology in the workplace. And that research has been something that's been new, but also has had some really remarkable and great findings. These studies have shown that positive emotions boost our job performance, that positive emotions in the workforce are contagious, which means one positive person or team can have a ripple effect that extends through entire organization. and that small, simple actions can have a big impact on happiness, on your team, and in your workplace. The PERMA model is a widely recognized and influential model in positive psychology. This model was proposed to help explain and define well-being in a greater depth. So we'll look through this acronym in each of the pieces of it. The first piece is P, which is positive emotion. Positive emotions, even though seeking positive emotions alone is not very effective in terms of boosting your well-being, experiencing positive emotions is still an important factor. Part of well-being is being able to enjoy yourself in the moment. So for example, being able to experience positive emotions. E, engagement. Having a sense of engagement in which we may lose track of time and become completely absorbed in something we enjoy and excel at. This is a very important part of well-being. It's hard to have a developed sense of well-being if you're not truly engaged in anything that you do. R, relationships. And I like to focus on the positivity part of the relationship. As humans, we're social creatures by nature, and we rely on connections with others to truly flourish. Having deep, meaningful relationships with others is vital to our well-being. M, meaning. Even someone who is happy most of the time may not have a developed sense of well-being if they don't have meaning in life. So when we dedicate ourselves to a cause or we recognize something bigger than ourselves, we can experience a set of meaning that there is simply no replacement for. That's really, really important piece. Just because you're happy, it doesn't mean you have a great sense of your well-being if you don't have a sense of purpose or meaning in life. And last part of the acronym is A, accomplishment or achievement. We will thrive when we're succeeding, achieving our goals, and bettering ourselves. Without a drive to accomplish and achieve, we are missing one big piece of that puzzle that is important to our authentic well-being. So positive psychology focuses on the positive events and influences in our lives, including these three major areas, or the field likes to call it the 3 pillars of positive psychology. The first is positive experiences like happiness, joy, inspiration, and love. The second is positive states and traits like gratitude, resilience, optimism, and compassion. And the third is positive institutions. So being able to apply positive principles within entire organizations and institutions. And I'd like to just note that the study of these topics and those of the like ultimately help us understand how we can adjust our day-to-day life to create our very best selves. Analysis of these topics have also helped us identify certain practices rooted in positive psychology that can benefit us. And we're going to talk about very shortly 2 of these types of exercises that we can do to help provide an overall sense of well-being and help us to be able to create our very own best sense of self.
Okay, so I wanted to kind of spend a little bit of time digging into further what Dr. House kind of set up for us with gratitude. And I pulled this quote from the book Entitled Gratitude by Oliver Sacks, who's a neuroscientist and psychologist, and wrote this book basically at the end of his life, thinking back on things. And he wrote, "I cannot pretend I am without fear, but my predominant feeling is one of gratitude. I have loved and been loved. I have been given much, and I have given something in return. Above all, I have been a sentient being, a thinking animal on this beautiful planet, and that in itself has been an enormous privilege and adventure." And I just think that quote really encapsulates a lot of what we mean when we talk about gratitude, that gratitude is not the absence of a negative emotion. It's the ability to kind of persist in a sense of positivity in the midst of other conflicting emotions, and to focus on that larger picture. And as Dr. House alluded to, there are a number of benefits of gratitude. psychological benefits are that cultivating positive emotions and thoughts can make us more aware and present. It increases our self-satisfaction and our mood in the moment and in the long term. It has physical benefits. Gratitude is actually associated with a stronger immune system, better sleep, less body pains, lower blood pressure, and better cardiac functioning. So it's a pretty like whole body benefit. And gratitude also has social benefits. So experiencing gratitude can lead us to stronger interpersonal relationships that are often characterized by better communication, empathy, and collaboration. So it has no shortage of benefits. So I'd like to do a little something together to kind of work on the mechanics of how we can cultivate this. And I am borrowing and adapting this exercise from a book that I highly recommend called Burnout. It's written by twin sisters, Emily and Amelia Nagoski. It's a really fantastic, accessible, sometimes humorous breakdown of the stress cycle that a lot of us can get trapped in, and then also provides us with a lot of skills for how to get out of the stress cycle. And this exercise that we're going to do today is one of those. As I'm kind of introducing this, if you could grab like a pen and paper to have handy, there's going to be some journaling involved, or you can even just open like the notes app on whatever's easiest for you, or even a Word document off your laptop, whatever works. So the authors wrote this exercise because they realized that through own experience with gratitude, as gratitude is really gaining kind of popularity with the positive psychology movement, several years ago, a lot of people were recommending, write down 10 things you feel grateful for, cultivate gratitude. And the authors really tried this and found that like simply just writing down the things that we feel grateful for just wasn't doing it for them. And in some sense, it was actually counterproductive. I don't know if you all have ever had the experience of being really down and then saying like, okay, no, let me be grateful. I'm grateful to have a house. I'm grateful to have food. I'm grateful to have friends. And then you start to feel almost like guilty for not feeling happy. And now you have all these things you should be grateful for, but you're not able to feel grateful. And it can actually like cultivate negative emotions. So this exercise is about getting to the root of how to really experience gratitude. And the science really tells us that to get the most from gratitude, we also need to tune into some self-compassion, our own strengths, and really experience like the full context of what's making us feel grateful, not just write a list and then hope that that makes us feel better. So I'd like you folks to take a moment and write down 2 or 3 events or circumstances for which you feel grateful. And these can be big or small. Just a little summary could be: had a Zoom with my friend who lives across the country, made time to take a walk yesterday, cooked my roommates a nourishing meal, just something that you're feeling grateful for. 2 or 3 events or circumstances that have happened. I'll give you all a moment. So I'd like you to pick one of these things to expand on it. And I'd like you to write down like exactly what happened, the details of the people who were involved, the specific things that happened that really contributed to your gratitude, maybe something that was said that felt really good, or something specific about that moment that made you feel really grateful, and how you felt at the time and what you were thinking about. So just really like make this event come to life. Write down some details about it. So the next part of this I'd like you to do, now that you've gotten some details out, you've kind of made this event come to life, I'd like you to explain a little bit about how this event came to be. So the circumstance thing that you're feeling grateful for, what's the cause of this thing? And specifically, I'd like you to write about what you specifically did to make these events unfold the way they did. How did you contribute to this thing happening? And just take a minute or two for that. Just like another 20 seconds or so, thinking about things that you specifically did to promote this circumstance unfolding the way it did. Okay, so this is a moment where I'd love for you folks to contribute however you want, whether that be kind of raising your hand or getting into the chat. What was this activity like? Was there anything that surprised you or anything you noticed? Any sort of shifts that happened in the last few moments? I'd love to hear from you.
Joanna, you may speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Well, I was just surprised. I picked a moment and I didn't realize why I was grateful for it. So that was interesting to me. And I realized I was grateful for it because it was a moment I wouldn't have had unless I made it happen. If that makes sense.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. It makes me think that sometimes it's really important to dig into the context of what we're grateful for so we can understand it more. Were you able to kind of notice any strengths that you were able to show in making that thing happen, Joanna?
Well, I just noticed that you can just make things happen if you choose to. Kind of thing. Like, it was just to go with my sister to sign her lease. And I was grateful that I got to go and see her new apartment. And it wouldn't have happened unless I called her and said, hey, I can come. And it wouldn't have happened if I didn't take the steps to make it happen. So it was interesting, like the little things you're grateful for that you don't even realize.
That's an awesome example. Thanks. Any other thoughts? Anything people noticed or were surprised by?
Hannah, it looks like there's a question in the Q&A. It says, this is from Palmer, I'm a group fitness trainer and helped a client achieve one of her goals. I was happy and grateful for it. But after doing this exercise, I felt that I had a bigger part in the process than I originally thought. Getting into the root of everything was extremely helpful.
Thanks, Palmer. That's awesome feedback. And I love that you were able to acknowledge that you had a bigger part in the process. A lot of times we tend to minimize or underestimate the impact that we have over our lives and over the positive impact we have on other people. And so really paying attention to that can allow us to actually see the positive impact we're having. I'm so glad you were able to take advantage of that. Okay, well, we can move on to our next piece. And if you thought about contributing before but weren't quite sure, you'll have another chance to, because we're going to do another activity as well. So I wanted to share a few quotes about optimism. And I think particularly sometimes I have been an optimism skeptic before, because I have thought that it kind of means we need to be just blindly assuming that everything will always work out no matter what, and it's all going to be fine and we don't have to do anything. Kind of like the opposite of what Joanna noticed about, we're in charge of making things happen. And positive psychology has helped me think about optimism differently. And these quotes really embody what we're trying to communicate about that. So I love this quote by Zadie Smith. Progress is never permanent, will always be threatened, must be redoubled, restated, and reimagined if it is to survive. And I think this really contributes to the idea that, optimism takes work. It takes effort to believe in a better future. It's not just inevitable, but we need it in order to kind of promote that progress. Rebecca Solnit also, she is the author of a book about, it's called Hope in the Dark. And the entire book is about hope, and it's essays about the good in humanity. It's a fabulous book. And she wrote, "Hope is a gift you don't have to surrender, a power you don't have to throw away." And I love the idea that hope is a power. And Eric Fromm wrote, "To have faith means to dare, to think the unthinkable, yet to act within the limits of the realistically possible." Another great idea that, optimism is still about being realistic. It's about hoping for something positive and planning for something positive while also acting within the limits of what's possible. So this leads us to our next exercise. So this will also involve a little bit of writing to yourself just to get some thoughts out. So keep that Word document close, or pen and paper, notes app, whatever's working for you right now. And this is going to take another kind of guided visual. So I would just like you to take a few moments to select a future time period. And that could be 6 months from now, 1 year, 5 years from now, 15 years from now. And I'd just like you to imagine that in that future time period, you are expressing your best possible self very strongly. And I would just like you to take a moment to visualize that best possible self in vivid detail. Like, what have you accomplished? How are you reaching your potential? What milestones have you reached? What dreams are you living? And try not to think in unrealistic fantasies. Like maybe you don't own your own private island, and, but maybe something that feels realistic, but is positive and attainable. And so just take a moment writing about that, like in vivid detail. What is this best possible self? When is it occurring in the timeline? So as you're writing this best possible self down, I'd like you to be sure to write about the character strengths that you're observing in this image. Like, what strengths are you showing to make this best possible self a reality? What parts of you are you leveraging to make this possible? How are you making yourself proud? So make sure to take a couple moments to focus on that part of it too. Take about 30 more seconds on this, and then we'll chat about it. So I'd love to hear from some people. Again, what was that like? What did you notice? Any surprises? Any reflections? Were there any challenges with this? Was this a hard one to do? You don't have to share just positive too if it was difficult or there were challenges. Share that too.
Yeah, no, we have someone who wrote in saying, it was surprising to me because life wasn't exactly perfect in some people's eyes, but I was just happy and content. It was nothing special, but it was something I imagined that made me happy.
Thank you so much. I love that. Yeah, it makes you because it belongs to you, right? And it's your vision. I think that's special. That gets at something important. And also the idea that the best possible self doesn't necessarily mean perfection, right? It means what feels realistic and some that we can be proud of. Lisa wrote in, I noticed a tendency to write hopefully, almost like I'm nervous to be too optimistic. Yeah. I think that that makes a lot of sense. Sometimes we think that kind of planning for the worst protects us from disappointment, and we can be optimistic. It takes a lot of courage to be optimistic because we're opening ourselves up to being vulnerable, to being disappointed. And there's so much out of our control. So I think that gets at this challenge of optimism. It's definitely not easy. And Dr. House and I don't want to give the impression that we think it's, the easiest thing in the world. It's a huge challenge. But I think it's really commendable, Lisa, that you were able to notice that. And maybe you can just be attentive to it next time you catch yourself saying hopefully in your head. maybe you can take a risk and say, you know what? No, I'm going to bank on that good thing happening and see where that leads me. Madison noticed that as well. Tanya wrote, in 5 to 10 years, I am a teacher and my students look up to me and appreciate me. I am in a healthy relationship where we communicate and express ourselves. I buy a house and work really hard to get there. I feel content. I love that. That makes me feel warm thinking of all those lovely things. Dr. House, any additional things from you before we move on?
No, I think that was wonderful. I appreciate all the folks who shared today. It was pretty enlightening to hear sort of where your thought process has been, and for you to engage in these exercise, and hopefully you guys can take something with you that you can take home and continue to use during these difficult times ahead. All right, so let's move forward. We're going to talk a little bit about how to use positive psychology during the pandemic. I think with the pandemic, the psychological, the social, the emotional, the financial toll that it took on many of us, I mean, it was pretty destructive and pretty difficult for many of us to grasp and to concept, and for it to still be going on and feeling like we really have sort of an uptick coming in the months ahead. This is a really good time to think about what can we just do as an individual to use some of what we've talked about today to make our lives better. The one thing I want to talk about is just that people are resilient. You know how to manage stress effectively to optimize your performance, your engagement, and your focus. Sometimes we forget, or we don't use the coping skills we know that we can use and do when we're just overwhelmed with stress. So to just remind yourself that you're resilient and that you could go back and, you might have to take some time to think about, is it exercise? Is it talking with friends? Is it being out in nature? Like, what is it that gets me to my happy place? And being able to kind of seek that out and make it happen for you. And it may look very different than what it used to, but you can still kind of be able to find that positivity in life. So I want to talk about social connection. So as I mentioned before, as humans, we desire to connect, to help, and to give to others in the times of stress. I know for myself, just being able to hug someone that is meaningful to me, that closeness, that being together with family, with close friends. And that's been a really big change with the pandemic, not having regular face-to-face social interactions, not having sort of that physical intimacy with others that you used to have. And that can take a big toll on mental health. It can cause many of us to feel socially isolated. And, that social isolation also is very important in terms of protecting the spread of the virus. So it's just, you feel like you're stuck between a rock and a hard place in many cases. But, even with the social distancing and the restrictions that we have, there are ways to still stay connected during this time. I think it's important to be intentional with social media use. So rather than like panic scrolling or, just kind of using it in ways that are not healthy, find some positive channels where you can learn something new, listen to good music, play a good online game with friends. There's definitely some positive things that you can do with social media. Some other things that you could try are some virtual, coffee or tea dates, some virtual dinners, some cooking sessions, online group chats. You can reverting back to good old fashioned phone calls. That's also a safe way that you can socially connect with others in this time. I think it's also, in terms of compassion, to think about how can we innovatively be compassionate towards others. So that might be as simple as buying food, leaving it on your neighbor's door, taking time for altruism. And I just think of like those simple acts of kindness, with making sure that social distancing and the restrictions are in hand and making sure you have your mask on, things like that, that can just help in terms of like strengthening community bonds, and as well as like making you feel good about yourself or doing for other people. Spending time in nature, that can be really, really therapeutic in many ways. And so although it can be challenging with the government restrictions, making some time to be outdoors has some great physical and psychological benefits. Being in nature may also have these restorative properties because they enhance our sensory pathways. And we didn't talk that much about that today, but the sight, the sound, the taste, the touch, the smell, like you can really achieve and cultivate positive emotions and really get all your senses going when you take time to be in nature and have experiences of tranquility. We talked a lot about gratitude today. We can feel and express gratitude in a number of ways, even when we are practicing social distancing. So taking a moment to think about the work of all our first responders and the doctors and the medical personnel who are on the front lines, maybe sending letters, sending notes, doing something, fundraising, anything that you can think of to sort of be able to appreciate and send some gratitude to them. Gratitude can be very simple. So take a picture of something beautiful and share it online, send flowers to a friend, just sharing one thing that you find important or something that you find beautiful and happy with somebody else can be truly appreciated. And I think we talked a little bit about this in the research portion of things, that there are psychological effects of gratitude, but there's also a lot of physical benefits as well. So, people who have a lot of gratitude in their life can cope with pain more effectively. They feel less pain, and they're able to kind of deal and manage stress in more healthy ways, and have lower blood pressure, and are just able to live more effective, healthy lives because of their gratitude, resiliency, optimism, all of those traits combined. And lastly is to be kind to yourself. This is a really, really tough time. So self-compassion is more important than ever now. So try not to judge yourself, try not to criticize yourself. Things are not perfect, and it's far from perfect in general, and especially during this time. So to think about ways that you can treat yourself with kindness, to advocate for yourself is really, really important. Sometimes I would say, think about sort of how you would treat your best friend, how you treat your close family member, and try to, have that viewpoint for yourself. Because sometimes we treat others better than we do ourselves. And so to try and maybe take that perspective can be helpful if you feel like you're having a hard time being kind for yourself and for finding self-compassion. And another way is to physically to be able to find some self-compassion to yourself is just to, somebody had told me, just place your hand on your heart, take a deep breath and exhale. And just that touch and that slow breathing can really bring about some sense of calmness, a sense of security, a sense of pause, and just taking a minute to stop and be mindful of where you are, and to kind of think about some of the things that you appreciate in life and to make sure that you're treating yourself well.
Yeah, and just a couple of other things that are just some kind of tangible practices you might consider adopting in your daily life that are kind of based on the PERMA model. So kind of getting at positive emotions, if that's something that you really feel like you need to cultivate in your life right now, you can make a practice. This was one of the first practices that was developed by and backed up with a lot of scientific support, is every day writing down 3 things that went well, just like in your notes app or in a little journal you keep by your bed, can make a really big difference and can actually improve sleep quality as well. Another thing you can do is plan at least 15 minutes of just pleasure into your schedule every day, something that's not for utility or for somebody else or because you have to, just something you enjoy. Planning that time and scheduling it in if you need to can be really, really valuable. To promote engagement and meaning, you can commit to doing 3 meaningful activities every day that use your strengths and benefit other people. So maybe if one of your strengths is showing compassion for other people, you can commit to writing a letter to a friend you haven't spoken to in a while, or I think Dr. House recommended cooking for somebody. That's just such a lovely thing to do. And that can really promote a sense of meaning and purpose. Another thing that you could do is find a challenging hobby or volunteer in some capacity. Positive psychology really promotes like the challenging hobby, because it might be counterproductive to think about this, but like actually what improves engagement and meaning the most is being challenged, is not doing something that feels just simple and easy and automatic, but actually requires a lot of effort, usually has the psychological rewards. To promote our positive relationships, we might consider writing a letter to a friend, performing secret good deeds or random acts of kindness is another thing. Even just taking your neighbor's trash can in, or raking up their leaves for them, or just doing something without necessarily the need for acknowledgement. Studies have found that actually might be even better for the giver than it is for the receiver psychologically. It does wonders for us to just do something and like we know inside that we did this good thing, and not getting the acknowledgement actually in some ways boosts that impact. To promote accomplishment, I might consider that you identify 5 personal strengths you have, and then 1 new way to use each one. We often channel a lot of our strengths into the things that we have to do. But one thing you can do is find a way to use your personal strengths in a way you're not using them right now. You could also write about a time when you were your best possible self and what made that possible. So kind of like the exercise we just did, but in the past tense, like a reflection back. So yeah, just some other ideas. So just to kind of wrap up, I wanted to also leave you all with some tangible tools using technology to promote well-being. These are some smartphone apps. Also, many of these could be compatible with a laptop if you downloaded them for Chrome or on your browser. Bliss is kind of an app it's a really easy to use app that's basically that positive emotion idea I was just talking about. You can just track the things that went well each day. Stop, Breathe, and Think and Simple Habit Meditation are both mindfulness apps. Like them both a lot because they offer short daily mindfulness breaks. So it's not like you have to commit to a 30-minute seated meditation. You can just do like a 5-minute mindfulness break. And then you can also cater the mindfulness to specific goals that you have. Happier is a gratitude journal in app form with some interactive courses. There's also like a whole online digital community with it, which is really nice. Azazu is a cool app that prompts you to enter 1 sentence per day about your favorite thing from the last 24 hours. So it's another kind of way to promote gratitude. And these apps are great too, because they have these notifications that can help keep you accountable to doing something. So you get an alert and that prompts you. Happify is based on a scientific book, so it uses science to offer a series of daily exercises to retrain your brain into conquering negative thoughts and stress. It's based on some psychological principles. It's a pretty cool app. And I also really like Happy Jar. It encourages you to record music, images, texts, things that bring you joy, and then it kind of stores them all for you. And then when you need a boost, you can shake the Happy Jar and it will kind of show you one of your memories. So that's also a cute app that you can use for giving yourself a boost in a hard moment. So just some ideas for you folks. And I think we'd love to hear from you. We've got a few minutes left if anybody has any questions or wants to contribute more.
Well, I see that there are 2 questions here. One is, how can we promote positive psychology in a world around me that is full of negativity, starting with daily news? I'm hoping that, I think this question came in a few minutes ago. I'm hoping that we just answered that through a lot of the apps and activities that Hannah and I shared, focusing on self-compassion and gratitude, being one with nature, being mindful of how you're using social media, being able to eliminate exposure to things that are negative and promote the positive. If you want more information on that, feel free to write in. But it looks like that question came in right before those last two slides that really gave you some concrete places to go in terms of downloading apps or other things that you can do to look on, especially within yourself. I think, and if you become a more positive minded person, that will reflect and be able and sort of be contagious to the others around you as well.
Yeah. And, I think that it's important, that we've both talked about, like, positive psychology is not about trying to create the absence of any suffering or the absence of any difficulty. Like, we know that that's not realistic, but positive psychology is really about building the resilience to facing those difficult moments and still having the courage to hold out some hope and cultivate love in the midst of all of that. So we're just holding it all together. We don't want to ignore or not deal with any one thing, but just have build the capacity to hold it all together, because it is really challenging.
Yeah, and another student had written in saying, is positive psychology the same as positive thinking? And I think I just echo what Hannah said, that positive thinking is an aspect to an extent to positive psychology, but positive psychology is more looking at sort of building on what's right, acknowledging that there are many things that are not right, but how can we, not focus our attention so much on the negative, know that it's there, but be able to then instead focus on the strengths and build those strengths so that our sort of negative emotions will dissipate and not be so strong and in the forefront.
Well, Lisa and Hannah, thank you so much for so many good thoughts and leading us forward today on how we can be more positive in our thinking. We appreciate the gifts of your time and effort today with this wonderful session. So I just say to everyone in attendance, last chance. Any other questions, feel free to either unmute yourself or to put something in the chat. We'll wait just a few more seconds to make sure everybody's had a chance to express any questions. Well, again, thank you so much. And just a reminder for everyone who's attending today that our next session is Wednesday, December 2 at 12 noon. The topic for that day is overcoming anxiety and gaining confidence over final exams. So very timely for the end of the semester with Dr. David Henriquez from here at Millersville. We do hope that you'll join us, and feel free to bring a friend. We'd love to increase our audience, and this is free and open to anyone. So again, thanks so much to everyone for attending today, and we hope that you have a good day, and please do come back again for our last session. Thank you.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you. Bye.